The room felt routine at first. Another oversight hearing, another long table lined with microphones, documents, and prepared statements. Cameras were already rolling, but the energy inside the chamber felt flat and predictable, the kind of political moment that often fades into the background before it even begins. Staffers shuffled papers. Lawmakers leaned back in their chairs. Most observers expected the same familiar pattern. Questions would be asked, answers would be carefully avoided, speeches would be delivered for the record, and by the end of the day, very little would change. But that expectation didn't last long. Sitting quietly at the dais was Representative Jasmine Crockett, a lawmaker already known for refusing to let hearings drift into empty political theater. She listened carefully as opening remarks stretched on. Her expression remained calm, almost patient, but there was a sharp focus in her eyes that suggested she was preparing for something more than routine political talking points. The tension in the room didn't come from raised voices or dramatic gestures. It came from the slow realization that the conversation was about to shift. One speaker after another repeated familiar phrases: accountability, oversight, and standards. Important words, but repeated so often they began to lose meaning. The hearing seemed to circle the same arguments without moving forward. Then the discussion suddenly turned personal. A remark crossed the invisible line between policy debate and personal attack. It was the kind of moment that can either pass quietly or completely change the atmosphere. For a brief second, the room went still. Then Jasmine Crockett leaned toward her microphone. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The calm control in her tone carried more weight than shouting ever could. She addressed the comment directly, choosing her words carefully. She reminded the committee why oversight hearings exist: not for insults, not for viral political moments, but for accountability, facts, and responsibility to the public. The shift in attention was immediate. Lawmakers who had been glancing at their phones looked up. Staffers stopped whispering. Even the quiet background noise of movement faded. Crockett continued, pointing out the contradiction between the committee's stated mission and what was actually happening inside the room. If standards truly mattered, she argued, they had to apply equally to everyone, not just political opponents. Her statement hung in the air longer than anyone expected. Across the dais, lawmakers adjusted in their seats. Some avoided eye contact. Cameras remained locked on Crockett as she spoke with steady confidence and complete composure. Then she asked a question, simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. If oversight is supposed to be about integrity, she asked, why do the rules sometimes seem flexible when political advantage is involved? The silence that followed said more than any speech could. No interruptions. No objections. No attempts to redirect the conversation. The hearing had stopped feeling routine. The chair attempted to move forward by calling on the next speaker, but the rhythm of the room had already changed. Every voice that followed sounded more cautious than before. Crockett sat back slightly, still composed, as if she had simply said what needed to be said. But the reaction around her made it clear the moment had landed exactly where it was intended. Minutes later, another remark suggested emotions were interfering with the committee's work. That was when Crockett leaned forward again. Her timing was precise. She calmly clarified that accountability and professionalism are not emotional reactions, they are expectations. Expectations that every member claims to support. Instead of escalating conflict, Crockett widened the conversation. She spoke about public trust, reminding the room that Americans watching these hearings judge not only policies but also the behavior of the people discussing them. Oversight hearings, she explained, are recorded in history, not just broadcast on television. The tone set in those rooms becomes part of the country's political memory. Her words landed heavily. She continued, explaining that standards cannot be selective. They cannot appear only when convenient and disappear when the cameras are on. Then she asked another question, even more direct than the first. If the committee expects respect from witnesses, shouldn't members demonstrate that same respect to each other? Several lawmakers nodded subtly. Others remained still. But the shift in atmosphere was undeniable. The hearing moved forward, but now every statement carried new weight. Lawmakers spoke more carefully. Interruptions became rare. Crockett didn't dominate the conversation. She didn't raise her voice. She simply listened, occasionally taking notes, allowing the new tone to settle naturally into the hearing. When she spoke again, she focused on principles: fairness, consistency, responsibility, and respect. She emphasized that oversight requires difficult questions, but also mutual professionalism. Without both, hearings risk becoming performances instead of investigations. Later, during witness testimony, Crockett asked a simple but powerful question about professional conduct among committee members and how it affects public trust. The witness explained that credibility depends heavily on how oversight is conducted. When hearings appear respectful and focused, people are more likely to trust the process. Crockett nodded and reinforced the point for the record. Oversight depends not only on evidence, but also on the conduct of those asking the questions. As the hearing stretched into the afternoon, fatigue began to show in small ways: loosened ties, shifting chairs, half-empty water glasses scattered across desks. But despite the long hours, the focus in the room remained sharper than when the day began. At one point, a lawmaker suggested that media coverage shapes public perception more than hearings themselves. Crockett responded calmly. She agreed media plays a role, but reminded the committee that cameras only record behavior. They don't create it. Professionalism displayed in real time, she said, sends a stronger message than any press release. The room fell silent once again. As the hearing approached its conclusion, Crockett delivered one final reflection. Oversight, she explained, is not just about holding others accountable, it is about demonstrating accountability in real time. She thanked witnesses and committee members for their participation and reminded the chamber that integrity and professionalism are not optional. They are essential. No dramatic ending. No raised voice. Just calm authority. Moments later, the gavel struck, officially ending the hearing. Lawmakers filed out more reflective than when they entered. Staffers quietly exchanged observations about how unusual it was to witness such a composed redirection of a tense political moment. Clips from the hearing soon began circulating online, not because of shouting or chaos, but because of clarity, discipline, and leadership under pressure. By the end of the day, one truth had become clear. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just responded to a moment. She had reshaped the entire hearing, leaving behind a powerful reminder that sometimes the strongest voice in the room isn't the loudest, it's the one that speaks with calm precision and unwavering purpose.